We welcome you to tonight's debate sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Lackawanna County and the University of Scranton Center for Ethics and Excellence in Public Service. The center goes by the acronym CEEPS. My name is Joanna Hopper. I'm the co-director of CEEPS and will be this evening's moderator. Before we begin, I'd like to share a few words about CEEPS and the League of Women Voters. The Center for Ethics and Excellence in Public Service, CEEPS, is a nonpartisan organization at the University of Scranton that endeavors to promote the common good through programs that support the development of ethical and competent public officials and of civically knowledgeable, responsible, and engaged community members. CEEPS provides resources for students, governing officials, and community members seeking education, training, or opportunities related to public service. To find out more about CEEPS and our upcoming events, please visit the web link included in your program. About the League of Women Voters. The League of Women Voters is also a nonpartisan organization. The League's mission is to promote political responsibility through the informed and active participation by citizens in their government. If you would like to join the League of Women Voters, membership information is available in your program, or you can go to the League's website, which is also printed in your program. I would like to thank the League of Women Voters, their director, and their board of Lackawanna County for their efforts towards tonight's debate. ECTV is taping tonight's debate for us. This is not a live broadcast. The tape debate will be aired on Comcast 19 local TV, so please check the ECTV schedule, which can be found in your program. The tape debate will also be available on YouTube via links from the League's website and the CEEPS website. A few procedural items for the audience. We ask that you please turn off or silence your phones and other devices. We also ask that you refrain from expressions of support, opposition, approval, or disapproval throughout the event. Hold your applause until after each candidate has given their closing statement, then you may applaud. Anyone causing a disturbance will be asked to leave. Please be aware that it is our policy that no person, candidate, or political group is allowed to use or edit any media from a League or CEEPS event for campaign purposes. Any use of media requires the express written approval of the League and CEEPS. No excerpts or sound bites may be taken from tonight's discussion or debate without our approval. Tonight's debate offers an opportunity for voters to learn about the candidates running for the Pennsylvania 114th House District, so that you, the voters, can make informed choices at the polls on Tuesday, November 8th. The questions I asked the candidates during this debate were developed by the League of Women Voters of Lackawanna County and CEEPS. The candidates have not been provided with the questions ahead of time, and both candidates will be asked to respond to the same questions. The candidates will have 2 minutes to answer each question. Each candidate has 3 one-minute rebuttal opportunities. After all questions have been asked and answered, each candidate will have 2 minutes to deliver their closing statement. Candidates drew lots to determine who would answer first for the first question. We will then rotate between the candidates as to who answers each question first. I will now introduce the candidates in alphabetical order. David Burgerhoff is the Republican candidate for the 114th Pennsylvania House District. He holds a bachelor's degree in communication and a minor in business from the University of Scranton. Mr. Burgerhoff is currently a Republican committeeman and was the minority inspector in District 2-2. In previous public service positions, Mr. Burgerhoff worked for the State Unemployment Compensation Service Center, the Social Security Administration, and as a rural carrier for the United States Postal Service. Mr. Burgerhoff has also worked as a manager and supervisor for a number of small businesses. He currently resides in the area with his family. Bridget Kosierowski is the Democratic candidate for the 114th Pennsylvania House District. She holds a bachelor's degree in nursing from Villanova University. Representative Kosierowski was elected as a state representative for the 114th District in 2019 and currently serves on the House Appropriations Committee, Health Committee, Insurance Committee, and Professional Licensure Committee. Representative Kosierowski's civic experience also includes her service on the auxiliary board for St. Joseph's Center. She was a registered nurse for 27 years and currently resides in Waverly Township with her family. We welcome both David Burgerhoff and Bridget Kosierowski. If the candidates are ready, we will now move on to our first question. Based on the earlier drawing, Representative Kosierowski will answer the first question first. Representative Kosierowski, Please share with us what you believe are the top 3 policy priorities of Pennsylvanians today that the state legislature can and should address.
So thank you very much. Thanks for everybody for being here this evening. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting us, the University of Scranton for hosting us here this evening. When you talk about priorities, especially in the State House, there are many. To name a few that are most important to me at this particular time, healthcare. Healthcare will always be something that's very important to me. Accessibility, affordability, retention and recruitment of doctors and nurses here in Lackawanna County to our hospitals. Education, funding our public schools correctly, the environment. Our environment and the Constitution, we are afforded the right to clean air and clean water, and we have to do everything to make that possible for our community and fund the Department of Environmental Protection. Realistic property tax reform, women's health, accessibility for women's health, and democracy. Democracy is something that we need to protect, and that's something that's very important to me, and those are the priorities that I would hold in office.
Mr. Burgerhoff, same question.
Thank you. Well, I tend to agree those are great ones to start with. I guess my top 3 would also be healthcare and trying to come up with some sort of affordable insurance ideas. I'm a proponent of like a MediShare type program, and I'd like to look into that for my constituents and try to get something going here in Pennsylvania that educates people on other options regarding insurance and healthcare. I also, along those lines, I agree that we need more nurses and other physicians. We have to come up with ways to help them get the training and the education they need, as well as work towards retention and paying them better. And we all know that medical error is a large reason why many of our people are dying, and it's an important aspect that needs to be addressed, and actually it's been part of my platform for a long time. Infrastructure is always important, and obviously Pennsylvania has serious infrastructure issues, and I'm not going to go into the details of everything that needs to be done. It's so vast and various, and we're going to have to come up with revolutionary ideas that actually help fund the infrastructure, and we need to find ways to reduce our costs when it comes to building and repairing our roads and bridges. And finally, obviously education funding, it's a big issue. And I see we just added more money to the education budget, which again is going to fall on the taxpayer, unfortunately. And although education is quite important, I would think most people would actually argue that it's overfunded in this state, as we're one of the highest spenders, especially the cost per student is close to $20,000 in this state. And I believe in the United States, it's on average of $16,000. Our Catholic schools, our private schools actually charge less per student, and our charter schools cost less than the public school system. The public school system is in decline as far as enrollment, and yet somehow the costs keep going up. So that's a real important issue, and if we want property tax and school tax reform, we're going to have to focus on those issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Burgerhoff, what do you believe is the biggest threat to our democracy today, and what can the state legislature do to limit or eliminate that threat?
The biggest threat, in my opinion, is hypocrisy. Our state legislatures, even our federal government, our officials, most of our elected officials play some kind of soundbite game, and they play some kind of gotcha game, and they're always trying to misrepresent one side or the other, or they're attacking individuals unfairly. We're looking at political ads now that are so far from the truth that we're not getting a realistic idea of what the candidates truly represent and who they are. If you have a good platform and if you have positive ideas and want to move the area forward, then let's hear your ideas. Let's not continue to tear each other apart. All we do is talk about division, and yet everything I hear is divisive. I've read statements just on abortion alone in this state, how it's been misrepresented after Roe v. Wade was overturned, all the lies that surrounded that. All the misrepresentations regarding the election and saying that Republicans didn't accept the election when they did, most of them did. We had questions regarding the process, certainly. And to act like there was no fraud or abuse, maybe from both sides. We have to acknowledge that. Those are threats to democracy. The changes to the election process were done haphazardly, and then the rules were changed. Sure, the Republicans did agree to some of these changes, but they didn't agree to the rule changes as the signatures weren't well verified. Now we're talking about not having dates on envelopes of returned ballots. They're called mail-in ballots, yet we have drop boxes. There's a lot of concerns regarding not only the integrity of our elections and the words of our legislatures, but as well as perception is reality, and whether you like it or not, many people are questioning the results of our elections and are concerned about the next election coming up. That's a big deal. It needs to be addressed openly and honestly, and if you can't be sincere and honest with the people and the public regarding the truth, then I don't trust you to be involved in the election process.
Representative Kosierowski.
So when we talk about democracy and the threat to democracy, I think most importantly, you can think about what's happening today and what is happening in our elections. And any time that there are barriers put up to people being able to exercise their right to vote is a threat to democracy. Things like mail-in voting, early registration, open primaries, those are all ways that we can have better accessibility for people to exercise that right to vote. You know, I think this election was one of the most secure, safe elections, the election of 2020. You think you can, you know, look at all the court hearings that have gone on, all of the situations that have been brought to judges, and there's never been any, cases that have been shown that there was election fraud. You know, I do agree that there are times when people, you know, we should have better, you know, maybe more election officials. You know, certainly I'm a huge advocate for early canvassing and letting, you know, having our election officials have a better way of, you know, at the end of the night being able to have a firm count. But when we talk about democracy, I think that the most important thing right now is you know, the availability for people to exercise their right to vote.
Thank you. Representative Kosierowski will be answering this question first. This question has to do with the independent state legislature theory. In an upcoming Supreme Court case, Moore v. Harper, the justices are expected to decide whether to support the independent state legislature theory, which would give state legislatures independent power, not subject to review by state courts, to set election rules and to draw congressional maps. Do you agree with or oppose the independent state legislature theory, and why?
I would agree with that decision. Going through redistricting now that we just had the new lines drawn, you know, it's really up to your constituents and your voters to be able to have an input, and where it's not up to the legislators to draw, you know, the districts. So I think that that's something that I would support and agree with moving forward. And I think that when you have a district that is drawn that allows true representation of our state of Pennsylvania, I think that that's something that I would support in the future.
Mr. Burgerhoff?
Yeah, I think it's a fine idea. I have no real problem with it. My only problem comes down to redistricting and gerrymandering is, like, I look at Scranton alone, there's almost 70,000 residents. It could have been its own district and should have been. And it's also the county seat, so it's absolutely ridiculous to me that they split up the city of Scranton. And then you go to other areas like our district, it's like Dixon City, a little bit of Scranton, Benton, Clark Summit, Clarks Green. You know, realistically, I think you could set a computer program that could do a much better job, and it's nonpartisan, you know, it's open for everyone. The computer figures out the best way to lay out the districts. I think we have to remove people out of it, because when it comes to people, unfortunately, we're not all honest. And it seems very hard. You can't legislate morality. Well, apparently we can't always even trust our legislators. So first of all, you have to remember, when you're electing someone, you have to really be able to trust them and feel that they're, you know, doing what's right for you, not what's right for them. And whenever we get into the redistricting and gerrymandering, it's already a corrupt process, and it's both parties play it, and they kind of give a district here, so you'll win this one. They gerrymander this one, so it goes to that other party. It's silliness, and it doesn't represent the people well, and it certainly doesn't represent the ethics of this area.
So this is related to the previous question and deals with the redistricting process for state legislative districts. Mr. Burgerhoff, what process do you favor for redistricting state legislative districts? Please explain your answer.
I think I kind of answered that in the last one. I'm going to say I really believe that computers can do it best. And like I said, there's no interference with personal opinion or any type of political motives. So I'm sure we're far enough technologically advanced that we can do it that way, and I don't need to expand on that. Thank you.
Representative Kosierowski?
Yeah, I agree. Not a nonpartisan commission, that you can, you know, have the citizens, you know, be drawing lines, not legislators looking at, you know, whom they would like to draw lines on their own voting districts, but a commission of, you know, a nonpartisan board.
The next question deals with primaries. Representative Kosierowski, currently Pennsylvania is one of the handful of states that still hold closed primaries. leaving a large proportion of registered voters unable to participate in primary elections that determine what candidates will be on general election ballots. Would you sponsor, co-sponsor, or vote for an open primary law?
Of course, I would definitely support a vote to open our primaries to independents, Republicans, and Democrats. The more people we have to participate in the democracy and to vote, the better.
Mr. Burgerhoff?
100% agree. As a matter of fact, the Libertarians approached me in the past to run on their ticket, and I would have been happy to do so. I was actually listening to the Nikki Stone show today on WIOK radio, and Tom Anderson is running as a Libertarian for one of the state districts, and he's running against a Republican. And to be honest with you, I like what Tom Anderson has to say. I'm familiar with him from Facebook, and I would certainly like to see someone like him have an opportunity to be on the ballot. So yes, I'm totally in favor of third-party or open primaries.
The next question has to do with mail-in ballots or absentee ballots. Mr. Burgerhoff, currently Pennsylvania law allows for absentee ballots that require an excuse to obtain one and mail-in ballots that do not require an excuse to obtain. Do you support the use of mail-in and absentee ballots?
I've always supported the absentee ballots. The mail-in ballots is a little bit more conflicting to me. Although I am reading up on the Georgia results lately, and they actually have a mail-in ballot system, a no-excuse mail-in ballot system, and they said they've had very good turnout and very good results. So I want to be honest, as a legislator, I have to be willing to move and to change my opinions. I was completely opposed to them in the beginning after reading the results of Georgia, and Georgia took a lot of hell for what they did when they changed their election law. It's turning out to work out quite well for them, or so they're stating. I want to see more results to really make a definitive answer. If we're going to have mail-in ballots, I want them mailed in. I want drop boxes eliminated because there's a lot of effort going into protecting these boxes. We're not even sure how we're going to go about that. I see people scrambling now to even get drop boxes in certain places and scrambling to how they're going to watch and secure these drop boxes. It could end up voiding tons of votes, and it's scary. You want to talk about disenfranchised, take a box of drop ballots and throw them away. That's disenfranchisement. So we have to be very cognizant that that's a possibility. So if people, again, perception is reality. A lot of people are uncomfortable with the drop boxes. A lot of people are uncomfortable with the no excuse mail-ins. But if it does expand the voting, I'm fine with it. Voting's supposed to be very important to all of us. That's the whole reason we're here. And therefore, you would hope that most people would try to get to the polls, and we wouldn't have a need for no excuse. But I understand people are busy. They have events come up in their life, different jobs, etc. For whatever reason, they believe that mail-in works for them. That's fine, but it has to be heavily processed and checked. You have to put a driver's license number on there, social security number on there. There has to be some way to identify the ballot to make sure that no one's overvoting. And there also has to be some sort of check with the signatures. Like, I believe they're supposed to have like a 90-some% accuracy or a comparability with the signatures. I think we dropped that requirement in a lot of the states this last time around. That's very concerning. And again, I'm just going to keep repeating it. Perception's reality. If people don't trust democracy, they're not going to participate in it.
Representative Kosierowski?
Yeah, I think to participate in democracy and being able to, I would never support any type of legislation to take away easier accessibility to vote. Certainly mail-in voting, we saw the benefits of mail-in voting during the COVID-19 pandemic. I mean, I just think about, a Tuesday, 10, 12 years ago, I have 4 kids under the age of 10. You may have wanted to get to that voting poll that day, but life happens and things happen. And it could be, that's just one example of a way that I knew that I was able to vote by mail. That was safe, secure, and I would never support any sort of legislation to take away non-excuse mail-in voting. Drop boxes, they are an easy, accessible way for people to drop off their ballot. Certainly, I would never support any kind of legislation to remove the drop boxes. So no, that's something that I would certainly want to see more of. The more people that are able to participate in democracy by voting, the better.
The next question deals with abortion. Representative Kosierowski, if the Pennsylvania Constitution is amended to say, quote, "This Constitution does not grant any right relating to abortion," end quote, it would be up to the state legislature and the governor to determine if state legislation would protect, limit, or terminate a woman's right to end her pregnancy. Please explain what state legislation regarding a woman's right to end a pregnancy you would support or oppose with your vote as a legislator.
So it's a difficult decision for anyone to make, and certainly as a legislator, you really have to think about how the vote would impact a woman. And I will always vote to protect the right for a woman to make a decision about her own body. A colleague of mine said on the House floor a couple of sessions ago that, if you're in the physician's office, you and your doctor, there's 2 chairs there, usually one for the doctor, one for you, and maybe a loved one. There's 203 legislators that I serve with. We do not belong in that room, helping to make a decision that says private between a woman and her doctor. So when these bills are written about abortion, a lot of times they are written to criminalize the physician, the doctor, the nurses. So I will always support legislation when it comes to abortion to ensure the right for a woman to make a decision about her own body. The government does not belong in the room making that decision.
Mr. Burgerhoff?
Yeah, it's obviously a tough topic, and I think it's unfortunately the way things have been couched in this society. It's very difficult for a man to even answer this question, and you didn't hear the man included in that conversation, did you? The man has a lot to say, or should, regarding the life of his child too, but he's not considered. And what are we considering the doctor on? I mean, we're not asking him if we should have an abortion or not, it appears to me. We're simply saying, how are you going to do this and when? We're just scheduling an appointment with the doctor. So we're really just putting it up to the woman, and it's an important distinction. Only a woman can have a child. But also the woman has that larger responsibility, and I know that's hard for a lot of people to grasp, but a man doesn't get pregnant, the woman does. And therefore it's a bigger choice for her, it's a bigger decision that she has prior to ever becoming pregnant, and we understand all the ways she can avoid being pregnant, and one of those things are abstinence, another thing is birth control, and every once in a while, you know what, those methods fail. Well, abstinence will never fail, but birth control can fail, and when it does, you took a risk and now you have to deal with the consequences, and you shouldn't look at it as a negative thing, take it as a blessing. Most parents think their children are a blessing. I just buried a 15-year-old girl, and the mother said, how will she live without that child? So, seriously, we should consider the man, we should consider the child. It's certainly separate. I love when people call the child a parasite. It's a disgusting analogy, but you know what's true? A parasite is separate from the mother. A parasite is separate from the host, I should say. That child is separate from the mother. So if you look at science, you can grasp that concept. It went in as a separate entity. It was an egg that embedded itself on a uterus. It's never been part of the mother. It's just associated with the mother and certainly needs the mother to survive. But to try to act like it's only the mother's body part is ridiculous. We're ignoring science. I come in at 16 weeks, which for me, 100% pro-life, it's very difficult. The majority, something like 90+% of abortions happen before 12 weeks anyway. If we're not going to be a moral society, I think we can at least have moral laws. Other countries around the world look to us. We need to set a standard, and here in Pennsylvania, we can at least set the standard at the viability of a child, which comes in around 16 weeks.
Thank you. Mr. Burgerhoff, you'll answer this question first. This has to do with fracking. The Pennsylvania Constitution, Article 1, Section 27 states, "The people have a right to clean air, pure water, and to the preservation of the natural, scenic, historic, and aesthetic values of the environment." Can fracking be done safely without harming public health and/or the state natural resources, including air, water, and land? Please explain what the state legislature needs to do to assure that fracking can be done safely, or why that may not be possible.
I believe we're doing quite a bit of fracking right now, and I think we're benefiting from it in many ways, as in jobs and revenue, and I think they're doing it fairly safely. I know there has been mistakes and incidences, and when that happens, we have appropriate measures. Perhaps they need to be more severe, the measures. I don't mind financial penalties. I think they should be huge. I think they should be massive. But I think there should be criminal penalties that should be very burdensome and very deterring. And I don't think we have enough of that. I've seen many times where they've skipped a step or bought a cheaper part, and we've had disasters. In that case, you should be criminally liable, not just civilly liable. And you should never be able to drill again in this state. Coming from an area where we were screwed by the coal miners, and we were coal mine barons, and we were left with the disasters we've had here, and we've been cleaning it up for a long time, I can understand the hesitancy of people. As a conservative, I'm not just a conservative politically, I'm also a conservative in my life. I recycle, I repurpose. I don't think there's many people out there who scrap as much as I do, who give away or recycle clothing like I do. Everything I wear, everything I own, I get for free through house cleanouts. I donate a ton. I encourage people on an individual level to take these steps. we need gas production in this state. And, you know, we get involved in that one program, I'm drawing a blank on it right now, but where the governor is trying to put us behind the 8 ball with the carbon offsets and, you know, taxing the industry. And you got New York and New Jersey standing in the way of our production because we can't get pipelines. And one of the biggest obstacles that face the natural gas industry, unfortunately, in our state right now is the pipeline issue, the capacity to carry this natural gas once we get it out of the ground. There's a lot of potential from heating to developing products to as a fuel source to exporting it overseas. I would think there's billions upon billions of dollars that could be realized if America would just open up its eyes and work together with each state which can produce and get the other states to fall in line instead of continually putting barriers in the way. And I think Pennsylvania needs to work with New York and New Jersey very heavily.
Representative Kosierowski.
So when you just mentioned the constitutional right for clean air and clean water we have here, we have a very rich natural resource in natural gas here in Marcellus stone, stale gas. The fracking that happens now, I think the most important thing that we need to do in the state legislature on our end is fund the Department of Environmental Protection. The Department of Environmental Protection has experts that know exactly how to make sure that the long-term effects of fracking do not affect our youth and people that will live here. There's no doubt that there are ways that we can do things better. We have to push forward with a realistic severance tax on our gas, natural gas, something that would offset, you know, property tax and be able to fund our public schools better. But when it comes to fracking and when it comes to natural gas, there's no doubt that we are here in Pennsylvania, one of the richest, you know, the state with this natural resource. But to be able to make sure that our Department of Environmental Protection is funded properly, I think that's something that would be most forefront and you know, moving forward with protecting with fracking.
Thank you. The next question deals with housing. Representative Kosierowski, Pennsylvania's housing market has seen unprecedented demand with a low supply of affordable housing and rapidly rising rents and home prices. How do you propose state government can begin to address the current housing crisis and increase housing opportunities for lower income residents, both renters and homeowners?
Well, one thing we do in our office, we have a rebate for you know, people that are in lower income brackets. The housing market and affordability is, you know, something that is a crisis across the country. I think you have to look at things like minimum wage and raising minimum wage so people can have more availability to afford rent and mortgage. You know, our interest rates are very high when people have a hard time obtaining a mortgage. They're working 2 and 3 jobs. It is a crisis that needs to be addressed, and I think that you know, programs like rebates and things that we can do to try to offset the cost would be something that, you know, as in our legislature and voting on those kind of areas, that's something that we can focus on.
Mr. Burgerhoff?
Well, first of all, it's a lot of times we seem to just define the problem without actually questioning the source of it. Why are housing prices going up so high? You know, I've been watching this trend, and California's for years now, their rents are ridiculous. They're trying to get the federal government to subsidize their rents. We have Section 8 and other housing programs here in Scranton, and these landlords are making a mint off of it. Therefore, they're driving up their rents because they're getting Section 8 money and government money to drive these rents up, just like the student loan crisis or 9 other problems you could relate to government getting involved in subsidizing these markets. Landlords and realtor companies and a bunch of other big corporations have been buying up a lot of apartments and housing. Most people have seen this reported. Anybody asking themselves why? They're all waiting for that government money to come in. It sounds like it's coming, doesn't it? You know, I'm not so sure we're working on the right solutions. School tax, property tax, we mentioned those. Those are driving up the cost of houses. They're driving up the cost of rent. You know, there's so many little fees and cost of living in this area or in any area that is generated because of the government. So the first thing you really want to do is try to find ways to reduce the cost of taxes on these homes, and you allow people to get into bigger homes. And the minimum wage, I don't know what that has to do with anything, because nobody's making minimum wage right now. I mean, again, they were trying to encourage the raising of the minimum wage, and most people say that's driven by the economy. We've all seen a big boost in income lately, and that's good because the economy's driving it. Not that the economy's good right now, but it will recover. But wages are up, and most people are making over minimum wage. If you're making minimum wage right now, all you need to do is look for another job. It's out there. Doesn't mean housing's going to be any more affordable because the prices are outrageous. But I'm very concerned when government just starts infusing money, because that's going to necessarily drive up the price. Historically, we've seen that happen. It's not the solution. When I'm down at the legislature, we'll discuss really good ideas. There'll be over 200 of us that can do it, and we'll listen to our constituents because they have many great ideas.
Thank you. The next question deals with gun control. Mr. Burgerhoff, what efforts or legislative reforms do you support, if any, that would increase regulation of firearms? Please explain your answer.
Well, I'm obviously a big constitutionalist, a right to bear arms, all that good stuff. It was actually, under Donald Trump that we passed the bump stock ban, which, that was a Republican, in case that surprises anybody. It surprised me a little bit. And I'm not sure what I feel about that. But I will say that bump stocks make you inaccurate with the weapon anyway, and I like to think if you're firing a gun, you're going to hit your target. So a lot of the guns that they're targeting right now, I often hear them AR-15, and if you've ever fired an AR-15, you'll find out it's quite accurate. That's not a bad thing. Most of us aren't experienced. Even if you train with your weapon, you're not that good. Cops, I think they say, miss 7 out of 10 of their shots, and we see they fired up dozens and dozens of rounds that hit their target. They need high-capacity magazines. Well, I guess the homeowner's going to need that as well, because we can't be expected to be any more experienced than the officers. But we want to be as accurate as we can, because we don't want to obviously hurt the innocent people. So if people are going to discuss any kind of outlaw and anything, maybe you should fire a weapon. Maybe you should understand a gun and not call an AR an assault rifle when it's not that at all. And on top of it, I talk about gun management, and every responsible gun owner gets upset with anyone who's not. So I do support legislation that says if you lose your gun or your gun is stolen, you are required to report that. I do encourage people to keep track of their weapons, whether that's weekly, daily, I don't care, but it should be often, to make sure your guns are where you think they are, and have a list, 1 through 12, not the names of the guns, not the guns themselves, but 1 through 12, the numbers, and a check that you check to make sure those guns are there. I do encourage trigger locks and safes. With the exception of the gun that you keep for protection, most of those guns could be locked up. And I do have this weird law that I propose, and I don't even know how you'd enforce it, it's odd, but I say that all guns should be trigger locked, but that the government can never check that you trigger lock your weapon. However, if your gun is used in a crime, if a child shoots himself with that weapon or someone happens to get hurt with that weapon, then the responsibility and your failure to protect that weapon gets a higher charge because you didn't have the trigger lock. I don't want the government coming in my house to make sure that trigger lock is on that gun, but I certainly want people held to account for careless gun ownership.
Representative Kosierowski.
Yeah, so I think when it comes to guns, there is a way that we can continue to protect the Second Amendment and have gun safety. There is no reason, that we in the legislature cannot move forward with just pragmatic solutions. There are those that are written and ready to be voted upon. Unfortunately, the House doesn't run them. Things like, reporting lost and stolen guns, more expansive background checks, limiting access of firearms to those that have domestic violence history, severe mental illness. I think when you hear all these stories about, like in Philadelphia last week alone, there was kids leaving football practice, and they were 14 years old, and 3 of them were shot at, and one little boy, 14, was killed. I don't know who had that gun or what kind of guns they were, but I do believe that most people are comfortable with some sort of legislation that does not allow people to buy weapons that are, made for combat and large amounts of ammunition. I think kids should be able to go to school, and parents drop off those kids at school and not worry about people having access to ammunition and guns that can, have catastrophic, disastrous injuries. So, doing both we can, protecting the Second Amendment and having gun safety laws.
May I?
Yes, go
rebut?
ahead. That's your first rebuttal.
there was a great example right there. She has no knowledge of where the gun came from that injured these children, nor did she know the background of the individuals who used the gun. If they're criminals that had that gun, no law is going to stop them. And that's why we're not going to restrict our own rights because we have criminals out there who don't follow the laws. It makes absolutely no sense. And I'll make a quick comment here regarding guns and drugs. You know, a lot of grandparents, parents, and people in general leave their drugs around their house, their prescription drugs, and their kids can get their hands on them just as easily as they can a gun. And we have an opioid crisis in this country, and we're having serious issues in this country regarding drugs. So I'd like people to start equating the two at some point, drugs and guns, because there's a lot of careless behavior when it results with, and you'll hear a lot of people, their first drug interaction was something that they found in their grandmother's medicine cabinet or their parents. And I know it's off topic, but to me, the two of them really come together, especially when we discuss the idea of suicide, because the majority of women actually kill themselves with pills. And that's why I think people need to protect their medicines as strongly as we want them to protect their guns.
Go ahead.
I think when you speak about access to narcotics and pills, that's actually a disease process. That's actually something that is a disease process that there is an opioid crisis. I do agree with that. But when you have addiction and people that overdose and people, that is actually a disease process. I don't think you can correlate gun violence and accessibility to weapons that people should not have access to an opioid addiction and a disease process such as drug addiction.
Okay. The next question deals with federal marijuana law and state marijuana law. Given President Biden's pardoning of those with federal marijuana convictions for possession, what action, if any, do you think the Pennsylvania legislature should take regarding marijuana laws? Representative Kosierowski, you will go first.
So when it comes to recreational marijuana, I am a supporter of decriminalization of minor offenses with recreational marijuana. Legalization of marijuana, I also support with the exception to how we regulate the example of someone, driving under the influence of marijuana and they have a catastrophic accident. We don't have a way of regulating that as we do with alcohol. So that's my only pause to legalization of recreational marijuana at this particular time. But I do understand that there's revenue that can come from legalization, but decriminalization I do support.
Mr. Burgerhoff?
Regarding the Biden thing, and I don't really care if they let people out of prison, but I'll tell you, they broke the law before it was changed, and therefore they should still be punished. So I want to see a lot of community service when we let these people out of prison. I don't want to just let them off the hook. Maybe a fine as well. You still have to pay for the mistakes you made, even if we've changed the law. You can't just grandfather in forgiveness. You earn that. So I just wanted to make that clear. As they move marijuana and make it more and more accessible and legal, that's fine, because there's a lot of things that come out of it, not just getting high. There's hemp products, we can make paper, thread. There's so many other uses for marijuana that we should be excited about, that they're going to deschedule, reclassify it. So I'm not against that either. And I know that people are conflicted about marijuana. It's a drug. Don't kid yourself. And everybody who wants to equate it to alcohol, I could come up with 10 other things. Like my mom would say, would you jump off a bridge if your friend did? Well, it's kind of like the same thing. Oh, beer's worse than weed. Doesn't matter. They're both bad. And you can be impaired by it, as she said. And there is ways to test. Actually, they do it in Colorado. We have tests that can tell you basically if you smoked pot within the last couple of hours. And there'll be a lot more DUIs in this state because of it. And there is in Colorado. And I'll point out a couple of facts. It has not helped with the opioid crisis in Colorado. It's like $500 million a year at best. That's what we're expecting. I think we just raised our education budget $3.5 billion. So we got the 0.5 covered with pot. We might as well tax it if we're going to legalize it. It doesn't cut into the black market. I'm going to tell you right now, that was proven by Colorado. So whether you support it or not, maybe just think of it as a rights thing, decriminalize it. I really could care less, to be honest with you. If people want it, people don't want it. It's such a divisive issue, but it really shouldn't be. Just do it. Just tax it. It's going to happen. It's inevitable. So there's really no reason to discuss it. There's no one stopping it. It's like a steamroller, and it's going to happen. The problem is the majority of arguments made during the Fetterman pot campaigns were all medicinal arguments, and it's already legal medicinally, but that's not good enough for everybody. So fine, legalize it and tax it.
The next question deals with campaign contribution limits. Pennsylvania is one of only a few states that do not have campaign contribution limits. That means people in groups can give unlimited amounts of money to candidates running for the Pennsylvania state and local government offices. What reforms to Pennsylvania's campaign finance system will you advocate for if elected? Mr. Burgerhoff, you'll go first.
Well, I think as long as you disclose where you get the money and where you spend it, I'm not going to stand in the way of anybody who wants to donate to a campaign, even if it's a large corporation. No one's ever paid me for my vote. So I don't care if you got $1 million or you got $1. No one's paying anybody for their votes. Sure, you might have a little bit more influence. I'm a candidate who doesn't raise money and I don't spend money. I don't know anybody. I don't know anybody. I think that makes me unfettered. And when you take a lot of money, I have to question, first of all, why are they giving it to you? Are you really that good? And what are you spending it on? I'm pretty sure you spent a little money this election. I'm sure she could address that because I don't want to guess at the numbers. I thought I read something astronomical and it would amaze me if that's what she spent, but I don't want to say it and be wrong, so I'm going to allow Bridget to tell us what she spent. But you know what? To me, I got to wonder where the money's going. Just because you tell me where it went doesn't necessarily mean I know why the motive was behind it. But it's people's money and they should be able to spend it how they wish. I do not, if you get caught doing anything regarding campaign contributions illegally, you should not only be prosecuted, you should never be able to run for elected office.
Representative Kosierowski.
Yeah, so when it comes to campaign contributions, and I would support limits on contributions to campaigns, there should be reform. My campaign transparency, you can look at it online, you can see whom, how, where I get campaign contributions from. 90% of it is from family, friends, and supporters. It's something that's you can see where it's spent. There's nothing that is hidden in any way, shape, or form. But campaign contributions, I would support a limit on the amounts, yes.
May I?
Yes, go ahead. That's your second rebuttal, I believe.
I hope I'm correct then, because I did read on the website, it looked like you spent about $180,000 this year. Is that correct?
I don't know what website you're referring to. But yeah, it costs money to run campaigns. It does. It costs money to, buy signs and buy literature for people to understand, especially in a new district, to see who is running in their district. And yeah, so I don't know what website you're referring to in terms of the cost, $183,000. But TV commercials are expensive to run. I do not have one this time. I wish that it were different. I don't like that part about this job. I don't like that part about having to raise, fundraising and spending money on mailers and such. But I really appreciate the people that do support me because it's something that unfortunately is necessary in this election cycle to have to raise money. It's tough for any candidate. I'm sure you ask them, it's a part of the job that they do not like. But this is what it's how you are able to run a campaign successfully and have your constituents know who you are and what you're about.
And
just as a point of order, so Representative Kosierowski has used 2 rebuttals. Mr. Burgerhoff has used 2. If you respond here, this will be your third rebuttal.
I asked her a question, but I wasn't done talking, and she ended up getting my time. So I would just like to make a quick statement, if I may.
Very quickly.
The $180,000, take a look around. I don't see 180,000 of signs. She said she doesn't have ads. Now I don't watch television. I wouldn't have known that. I'm just curious where that 180,000 really went.
You were probably referring to last year's campaign, I believe, which 2 years ago, which I did have television.
I think we've answered the question.
We're going to move on to the next question. Thank you. This question, Representative Kosierowski will answer first. This has to do with legislative salaries. Assuming at least an 8.8% increase based on the Consumer Price Index in August 2021, state legislators' salaries will increase to $103,732 in January 2022. The state minimum wage is $7.25 and has not increased since 2009. Can you justify indexing the salaries of legislators and top state officials while leaving the state minimum wage at $7.25 an hour?
Yeah, so I have supported a House bill that ends COLA. That's something that I have supported. We have not run that bill, but it is something that my colleagues and I have supported to end the COLA. In terms of minimum wage, yes, that's it. When you compare both, it doesn't make sense. I am also on the bill to raise the minimum wage. Other states besides Pennsylvania, including West Virginia, New Jersey, their minimum wage is raised. I know there are people that start jobs at minimum wage at $7.25, which is not a sustainable wage to live. That is why lots of people have to have a second job. They can't afford health insurance. So in terms of the automatic raises, that was something that was voted on before my time in the State House, but I have supported a House bill to end COLA.
Mr. Burgerhoff?
If you knew the number of bills that don't get heard on the floor or voted on, these guys could introduce anything to make themselves look good, although I believe her. I think she's being sincere. I don't believe you take per diems either. So
I do not take per diems,
I
no.
think that's excellent. I wouldn't take per diems either. I give her a lot of credit. I know there's a lot of people out there now that aren't going to take per diems. I don't know why she didn't introduce a bill that would reduce the pay of legislators, because that's what I would do. I think they should get about $70,000 a year. I'm not going to compare them to people making minimum wage. I haven't made minimum wage ever in my life. I earn my wage, and it's a lot more than that. So I'm not going to say that you could even bring minimum wage into this conversation. It's what you bring to the table that makes you worth what you're worth. They're certainly overpaid, and for what they've been doing the last few years, they're all overpaid. So I want to see a reduction in what they make. I want to see a reduction in the legislature. I believe there's a bill out there to reduce it to 150 people in the House. I support that bill, even if it eliminated my job. I'm here to eliminate jobs. I'm not here to create them. I'm here to reduce government. I'm not here to have a job. I'm the last person you'll ever think is a career person, because I don't do careers. Like I say, I've had a lot of jobs, and people say I can't hold a job. No, a job can't hold me. You know, I get bored very quickly. I come in, I solve the problem, I move on. I'm here to solve problems. I'm here to solve them quickly. I will not take a pension. I want a reduction of the wage. I'm giving back 15% of my salary, and this time around, I'm going to use it to fund a cat project, because I want to get the trap and neuter program going strong in this area. And as well, I'm giving $5,000 a year of my salary. I want to start a small scholarship program. I'm trying to intentionally reduce my wage and give back to the community, because I can live on $35,000, $40,000 a year. I'm debt-free. It's not about the money for me. It's about reducing government and helping my friends, my neighbors, my family, and everyone out there who's suffering. And the arrogance of this legislature, one of the largest legislators, one of the most well-paid, and a part-time job out there doing absolutely nothing for us, is enough to make me sick.
Your third rebuttal,
Yeah,
go ahead.
I take offense to calling us part-time and calling us not doing anything. I mean, when you really look at the work that we get to do for our constituents, whether it be helping them with rebates, bringing millions of dollars back to our districts to repair blight buildings, to help projects move along, whether it be Little Leagues or paving roads to make. That's the job that I do as a state representative, to represent the 63,000 people in my district. I work really hard. I was a nurse for 27 years. I punched a clock, 6 a.m. to 2:30. This job that I have now is much more challenging in terms of time management and in terms of working, in terms of, just taking in all of the responsibilities that we have. I think it's hard to put a salary on someone's job and what they're worth, but I do not think we do nothing as state legislators. We are the liaison to state-funded programs and those that need it most in our districts. And most of those people are people that suffer with poverty, suffer in terrible school districts, need help in repairing, roads, bridges, and the places that they live.
Kosierowski, I'll have to ask you to stop. Thank
Okay.
you. The next question deals with tax laws. Mr. Burgerhoff, explain one change to tax laws that you believe will benefit lower and middle income individuals, and explain what legislative change you would support to make up for the lost revenue of your tax law proposal.
Well, I mean, everybody wants to be focused on the school funding and the school property tax most of all, so I'm going to go with that. I want to do whatever I can to reduce or hopefully eliminate school property tax. And again, there's 203 legislators that can figure out the revenues in order to replace it, but I have a couple ideas. And I just have ideas, and people can dispute them or dislike them, but at least have your own idea if you're going to criticize mine. And one is obviously raise the sales tax 1%. Pretty much everyone's on board for that. We're competitive with the states around us, so it's fine. And I've read it generates like $1 billion. That's what they were saying with House Bill 76 back in the day. I came up with an idea. It's a little odd, but I have a thing I call a rounding tax. And so you make a purchase and it came to 86 cents, they would round it up to 90 cents, meaning there's a 4-cent increase, very negligible, you wouldn't see it. If it was 89 cents, it would round up a penny, you wouldn't even feel it. If it was 90 cents, it wouldn't round up at all. So it's 0 to 4 cents maximum per transaction. So small, but it can really add up, especially if a 1% sales tax increase could add up to $1 billion. I don't know what my idea would add up to be. I also have other revenue ideas, like we get our driver's license every 4 years. I'm a hunter, I'm a fisherman, but I don't get my license every year. I don't always have the time. But if I were able to get the endorsements on my license, which I have to carry anyway when I fish or I hunt, and other endorsements as well we can include in there, I can buy my driver's license or my fishing license and my hunting license at the same time that I'm getting my driver's license. Therefore, a lot of people who don't participate every year, we're losing that revenue. You would get it off me now every year for the 4 years, and the next 4 years, I would just continue to renew it. I think that generates a lot of money, and I think we're just missing very easy stuff to pick off the trees here when it comes to revenue. I also want to open up the state forests and state game lands, and this might not be popular with a lot of people, but I spend a lot of time on these properties, and I want to open them up more for off-road type ATV style recreational vehicles. And I think if we can open up private and public lands together through a cooperative effort, we can actually get to remote areas where you could never get hiking or with a car anyway, and build entire buildings and facilities and recreational areas that could bring a lot of tourism and money to our treasury. Thank you.
Representative Kosierowski, same question?
Yeah, I think, again, property tax is one of the biggest burdens that people have here. You know, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but we do need to have realistic reform in our property tax. And ways that I support to do, and we've talked about this for a long time, is things like closing the Delaware loophole, which allows large corporations to legally avoid paying their share of state taxes. Putting a reasonable and responsible tax on Marcellus Shale. I think that's something that we need to really push forward. Legalization of marijuana. I think that's something that we can talk about and tax. So those are some ways that I think that we can bring revenue and give relief to people that are having that burden of high property taxes.
Thank you. So now I would like to invite the candidates to give their closing statements. So based on the drawing that we did at the beginning, Representative Kosierowski will go first. You'll have 2 minutes for a closing statement. Go ahead.
And thank you again for having us here today. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum tonight, and thank you to the University of Scranton, all of you who are here to listen to matters that, things that matter most to you. I was sworn into office in 2019, went to Harrisburg and really went to work, learned an enormous amount, and I'm really proud of the work that I've done here for the district that I represent. There's a reason why I was able to pass a bill in a Republican-held House, because I'm able to work with others across the aisle. It's really important to have that skill set, and it's the only way that we'll be able to get anything done. There's a reason why when the vaccine for the COVID-19 vaccine did not meet the demand, and the supply was needed to get out to our Commonwealth, to those that needed it most. There's a reason why the governor asked me, as the only registered nurse in the House, to serve on the task force, to formulate a plan and execute that plan to get that vaccine out to those that needed it most. There's a reason why I was able to bring $200 million back to my district, and there was a reason why I've been reelected twice. Those things I'm proud of, and those things I think that I want to continue. I'm a nurse. I have 4 kids. When problems come my way, I never look for the blame. You have to get a solution. I think that's something that I'm proud of. That's the way I've worked in Pennsylvania State House, and I'm hoping to be able to continue that. We still have a lot of work to do. We've talked about many of these things tonight. Realistic property tax reform, accessibility to health care, good jobs and good wages. But most importantly to me, I want to make sure that we protect democracy, and we make sure that the government is not interfering with women's health care choices. Thank you for being here tonight, and I humbly ask for your vote on November 8th.
Mr. Burgerhoff? Oh, sorry. Mr. Burgerhoff, go ahead.
Well, yes, thank you to everyone here and everyone who hosted the event. It's always good to see some people in the crowd. Never turn out like you'd want. Hopefully more people watch online because, if voting is so important, why aren't we not more involved? It's amazing we go out of our way to allow people the opportunity to vote, and then they don't take it serious. But, that's neither here nor there. Today, Bridget had mentioned that I guess she was justifying the salary of the state representatives. Again, I appreciate what she has done, but I still believe it's too high, and I think that we could introduce a bill that reduces the legislator as well as lower the cost. I'm willing to do that. I'm going to do that. If you heard me, I had several revenue ideas that were new. No one's ever brought them up. They're mine. How many people have original ideas? I was credited with a couple hundreds of millions last time I ran in ideas because I didn't get to give you guys all my ideas. I'm just starting, and I'm new to this, so you can imagine once I have my feet on the ground and I have some real information what I could possibly do. The Delaware loophole, we've been talking about for how many years now? It's still not done. Let's get it done. All these things we're going to do, we're always kicking the can down the road. We hear all these things. Eliminating school property taxes, we just added another, $3.5 billion. We're ignoring the fact that Pennsylvania has one of the highest rates per student. We're ignoring the fact that charter schools, Catholic schools, private schools, all educate their kids for less. Why aren't we looking to the areas of success and emulating that? We've had a drop in the public schools, and yet they cost more. We need to go to the source of these problems and stop acting like more money makes a difference. And the worst part about all of this is the more money we spend on education, we're not getting any benefit in the results of the education the students are receiving. All you ever hear about is fair funding and funding and funding and funding. We never talk about the curricula. And now when we do, it's always things we don't want in there because we're putting horrible things into our system. Let's get back to educating our kids with important things, the 3 R's. Let's get an economics class in there, and let's start foreign languages at a younger level. Let's begin with that. Let's make government work for us and not work against us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So we thank both of the candidates for giving of their time to engage with voters. Remember, the last day to register to vote in the November 8th election is October 24th. The last day to apply for a mail-in ballot is November 1st. The deadline to return your voted absentee or mail-in ballot is 8 p.m. on November 8th. Voting in person at your assigned polling place occurs on November 8th between 7 a.m. and 8 p.m. Thank you for watching this program, co-sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Lackawanna County and the University of Scranton Center for Ethics and Excellence in Public Service. Have a good evening.
That was fun. I love these things.
Yeah, good night.